If the novel you're writing feels slow or maybe just unfocused, I can almost guarantee the problem is with your chapters. Because chapters aren't just breaks in the story. When I teach novel writing workshops to students, I refer to chapters as the novel's engines, these like units of narrative progression. And they should be doing one of four things. And once you learn to recognize these four functions, you can craft a novel that doesn't ask a reader to keep reading, but rather demands they keep reading. And if you're a writer just looking for some tips, some challenges, or just some solidarity, give me a follow and let's talk about writing. As I mentioned earlier, every chapter should be doing one of four things, and these are escalation, revelation, reorientation, or compression. So let's go through those one by one, and for the sake of a continuous example, let's say we're writing a detective novel of some kind, but remember this applies across a genre. So the first job a chapter can do is escalation. Escalation means the situation becomes more dangerous, complicated, or difficult. So imagine early in our novel, Detective Ramirez interviews a witness who says they saw the victim the night before the murder. Okay, that's interesting. But the chapter ends with Ramirez learning something else. The school calls and his daughter has been suspended for fighting with the victim's son. Now the case just got more complicated, obstacle-ridden, and personal. The stakes went up. That's escalation. Escalation keeps readers turning pages because the problem isn't just continuing, it's growing. So the second thing a chapter can do is revelation. Revelation isn't just new information, it's information that changes how we understand what came before. So imagine Detective Ramirez finds the victim's phone. He scrolls through the messages and discovers the victim had been receiving death threats. That's new information. But then Ramirez realizes something strange. The threatening messages were sent from a phone registered to the victim's own address. Maybe the victim was being blackmailed. Maybe someone close to them was involved. Maybe they had a secret. Suddenly, the reader's understanding of the entire situation before this changes. Does it escalate the situation? Sure, but the reason we distinguish between revelation and escalation is that revelations don't just add pressure to the story, but rather they change the way readers understand everything that came before this moment. They don't just move the plot forward, they make you rethink what you thought you knew. The third thing a chapter can do is reorientation, where the reader understands the entire situation differently. So this one is subtle but really powerful. Whereas revelation makes us rethink what came before, reorientation means the reader suddenly sees the rest of the story from a different angle. In a later chapter, Ramirez interviews the victim's sister. She reveals something surprising. The night before the murder, the victim was pulled over by the police and unlawfully detained for no good reason. Now the reader has to reorient their understanding going forward. Maybe the victim had a history with the police department. Maybe they knew something they weren't supposed to know. The story told didn't just add new information, it shifted the entire moral landscape of the novel. That's reorientation. And the fourth thing a novel chapter can do is compression. Compression usually happens when time jumps forward, and in this chapter we see the results of previous actions taken. So let's say Detective Ramirez arrests the police officer we mentioned earlier who was harassing the victim. End of chapter. Then the next chapter opens 3 days later. The officer has been released due to a lack of evidence. The department is furious, and Detective Ramirez's captain tells them they're off the case. The time jump compresses those events between those days and allows the consequences to land quickly, immediately. Instead of watching every hour unfold uncertainly, the chapter structure lets the story leap forward to the moment that actually matters. Compression is what keeps novels from feeling slow or bloated. So here's the important thing. Not every chapter needs explosions or plot twists to be interesting, but every chapter should be doing something. Maybe you're thinking, can a chapter do 2 or more of those things you mentioned? The answer is an unsatisfying, it depends. But I would nonetheless advise you to try to stick to one of those per chapter, simply because if you're throwing a lot in, then they're going to lose their punch by sheer proximity to each other. One per chapter is a pretty good rate to keep a reader focused and interested. Now, of course, mystery novels are very good at manipulating all of this. They do a sort of sleight of hand move where they throw in revelations and reorientations when you're too busy paying attention to a much flashier but ultimately useless revelation or the red herring. But that's a video for maybe another day. So if your novel's chapter doesn't escalate, reveal, reorient, or compress our consequences, it's probably just filler. And filler is how novels die. If you found this video helpful, give me a follow, check out my books, maybe order the one that comes out this June. I think it's my best yet, and I'm super stoked for you to read it.